Good morning. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, which means the Bitcoin halving has happened. It happened last Friday, April 19th, around 5 p.m. We made it, boys. We made it to the other side. I've been talking about the Bitcoin halving for a while now. It has happened. It was a bit of a dud, though, in my opinion. We didn't really see that much action with the Bitcoin price. But that kind of makes sense when you think about it. This is an event we all knew was going to happen. We knew around the time when it was going to happen. So it's not like it really shocked the markets. It wasn't some unforeseen, unexpected event. But we got to talk about it. This is a Bitcoin YouTube. How could I not talk about the Bitcoin halving? It happens once every 4 years. So we got to get into it. Before I do, please make sure to like the video and also subscribe to the YouTube. Really appreciate your support. Let's get into the halving. If you're not familiar with the halving, it is an event that happens every 4 years where the Bitcoin block reward, which is the Bitcoin rewarded to Bitcoin miners every 10 minutes, gets cut in half. So before Friday at around 5 p.m., the Bitcoin block reward was 6.25 Bitcoin. It is now 3.125 Bitcoin. Now, why is that a big deal? Supply and demand, baby. Supply and demand is the driver of value. And I often think when people look to value assets, they overcomplicate things sometimes. But when we look at Bitcoin, I think the best way to measure Bitcoin's value is supply and demand. Just keep it simple. We know the supply, so all you really have to do is focus on the demand. It's easy, right? So I think over time, with this incoming supply getting cut in half, we are going to see that reflected in the Bitcoin price, especially with the amount of demand that we're seeing this year. So before Friday, we had 900 Bitcoin coming into the circulating supply every day. We now have 450 Bitcoin coming into the circulating supply every day. And when you look at how much Bitcoin these spot Bitcoin ETFs are eating up every day, it's typically more than 450 Bitcoin. For example, yesterday I saw we had a total inflows for the 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs. It was just above $50 million worth of Bitcoin. So 450 Bitcoin, you multiply that by the current Bitcoin price, I think it's around 65,000. So that's around like 30 million dollars worth of Bitcoin. So if we continue to see these spot Bitcoin ETF inflows outpace the amount of Bitcoin that's coming into the circulating supply, that's going to be reflected in the price, right? And this is just one avenue of demand for Bitcoin. I don't buy the spot Bitcoin ETF. I buy it straight up. And I think that's the best way to buy it. But there's lots of other ways to buy Bitcoin. I'm sure that nation states are starting to pay a little bit more attention now that the price has gone up a lot, and other nation states are kind of becoming more friendly to Bitcoin. And then you look at institutions looking to get involved now that Bitcoin is becoming a more established and accepted asset. So I think we're going to see at least the same level of demand that we're seeing right now for the rest of the year, and maybe increased demand. We definitely had a lot of Bitcoin demand when these in March for these spot Bitcoin ETFs. We'll see how these inflows shake out shake in for the rest of the year. But I definitely think we will have some more big days, some more big weeks for these spot Bitcoin ETFs, especially as more institutions look to come in and buy them. And then just think about all the foreign products that are going to come out for Bitcoin. So two stats I want to go over really quick that make me think Bitcoin is going higher in the next 12 to 18 months. The amount of Bitcoin, the Bitcoin balance on exchanges is dwindling. So I'm not going to show this chart because I don't know if I legally can. It might be copyright. But we've seen the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges dwindling since these spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved, because we have these, big financial giants like BlackRock, Fidelity coming in and swooping this Bitcoin off exchanges. So on January 1st of this year, there was 1.88 million Bitcoin on exchanges. We're now looking at 1.73 million Bitcoin. And now that the Bitcoin block reward has been cut in half, one of the main sellers to these exchanges are these Bitcoin miners. When they get Bitcoin, they need to sell it in order to pay for their expenses, right? It's very costly to run a Bitcoin mining operation. But now that we have less Bitcoin coming into these miners, we're going to see them selling less to the exchanges. So I only expect this balance to the dwindling of this balance on exchanges to accelerate. And the reality is we will get to a time when there just isn't a lot of Bitcoin being sold out there, right? And that's supply shock. And when we get supply shock, that's when we get some big moves in the price, because the price has to move to a place where Bitcoin holders are willing to sell. And I know for me, I'm not really willing to sell at any dollar price, and I'm sure a lot of other people feel the same way. The only reason I need dollars is to pay my rent and to buy my groceries, but that might be changing pretty soon. We might see more merchants accepting Bitcoin. So the only way I'm selling my Bitcoin is if you make me sell it. If you have an asset that I want and you're only willing to accept Bitcoin. And who knows, I'm sure a lot of investors out there have a dollar price, but it's probably a lot higher. I think a lot of Bitcoin holders are holding Bitcoin for the long term. They don't want to sell. So we'll see if we see Bitcoin turn into more of a medium of exchange, and then if merchants are only willing to accept Bitcoin, then that forces holders to sell. But last stat I want to show before I wrap this video up is the amount of Bitcoin that has remained dormant for over a year, that hasn't moved in over a year. It has gone down a little bit over the past couple of months, but it's still 66%. So 66% of the circulating supply of Bitcoin has not moved in over a year. So that just tells you that people are not really willing to part with their Bitcoin. They want to hold it. They don't want to sell back into dollars because their dollars will just inflate away. They rather just keep their money in Bitcoin. And it'll be interesting to see where this chart goes in the for the rest of the year. But that just shows you that people are buying and they're holding. And when we get to that point where people, there isn't a lot of Bitcoin on exchanges and nobody's willing to sell, that's when we get big moves in the price. When will that be? I don't know, but I'm not selling. So that wraps it up for this video. If you're interested in getting exposure to the Bitcoin, especially if you haven't already, check out my Swan Bitcoin link in the description. If you use that link, you can get $10 off, $10 worth of Bitcoin for free with your first Bitcoin purchase. Not a bad deal. If you didn't like the video and subscribe, please make sure to do that now. And thanks for watching. I'll be back soon.